In this lesson, we will look at Unit 6, Section 6.6, General Form of the Equation for a Linear Relation. In this lesson, you will learn how to express a linear relation in general form, how to explain strategies for graphing a linear relation in general form, how to determine slope from this form, and how to rewrite equations in the different forms that we have discussed. First of all, general form is a new form for a linear relation. We previously looked at the slope-intercept form and the slope-point form. These two forms can be rearranged so that the general form can be written. The general form of a linear equation is ax plus by plus c, which equals to 0, where a is a whole number and b and c are integers. So for an example, if you have 2x subtract 3y equals 12, that looks to be very similar to the general form. However, it's not quite there yet. The coefficients and the constant terms are integers. The x and y terms are on the left-hand side of the equation. However, we don't have the constant term on the left-hand side as well. That is still on the right-hand side. So what you would need to do, you would need to subtract 12 on both sides, so that if we move the constant term to the left side of the equation would now be in general form. 2x subtract 3y subtract 12, which equals to 0. So when discussing and using general form, you have to be very careful and make sure that this equation equals to 0 and that all terms are on the left-hand side of the equation. Now, general form, there are two things we need to look at and be careful of. If a is equal to 0, the general form equation will become by plus c, which equals to 0. If you have to rearrange for y, you will quickly see that it is y equals negative c divided by b. If there are numbers that are substituted in for c and b, and we graph this line, you will see that this produces a horizontal line. So when the x variable is eliminated, and we only have the y variable left and a constant term, we will have a horizontal line. If b equals 0, where the y variable is eliminated and we still have ax plus c equals 0, when we solve for variable x, we will have x equals negative c divided by a. By substituting values in for negative c and a and graphing the line, we will quickly see that this is a vertical line. So once the variable of x is eliminated, we get a horizontal line. Once the variable of y is eliminated, we get a vertical line. Graphing general form. General form of a linear relation produces an efficient method for determining the x and the y intercepts. To graph a function given in general form, you must find the intercepts of the graph, find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and then you can use those coordinate points produced to graph the line. If an equation is given in general form, you must first rearrange the form so that we have y equals f of x before graphing the technology. So general form is an efficient method to use. However, it is a little difficult to read slope and the y-intercept from it. Therefore, we use this form to graph only using the x and y-intercept methods. So if you are asked to determine the slope from general form, in order to do this, you must rewrite the general form in slope-intercept form. This can be a little difficult, but all you have to do is keep in mind that the slope-intercept form is of the form y equals mx plus b, where the only variable that is left on the left-hand side is the y, and everything else is moved to the right-hand side. So starting off with 5x subtract 2y plus 12 equals 0, you can first move the y variable, or the x variable, by subtracting 5x on both sides. Next, we will move the coefficient of positive 12 by subtracting 12 on both sides. This will produce negative 2y equals negative 5x subtract 12. In order to isolate the variable of y and get it by itself, you're going to divide both sides by negative 2, resulting in y equals 5/2 x plus 6. This is only one way that we can rewrite the general form. You have to become really familiar with working between the intercept form, the point form, or the general form. You're going to have to rewrite each form from different forms and be used to that method. So rewriting general forms, certain forms of the equation of a linear function identify the slope and y-intercept of the graph, or the slope and the coordinates of a point on the graph. General form is not always the best form to use. So these 3 points are important to remember. General form can be written into slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form can be rewritten into the general form. Slope-point form can be rewritten to slope-intercept and the general forms. It is really important that you can be able to distinguish between the 3 forms and recognize which form is which. Now, in summary, the general form equation is ax plus by plus c equals 0, where a is a whole number and b and c are integers. When graphing a function in slope-intercept form, determine the x and y intercepts, write the intercepts as coordinate points, and draw a line through those points. General form is not always the best form to use, so it is best to recognize which form is the easiest to find slope, the y-intercept, or just a coordinate point.